Thank you, Doc. So as we continue, let's just revisit our norms here. Be on time, we're gonna end on time at your own pace. Follow the agenda, stay focused, bring proper materials, respect everyone's right to speak, and confidentiality. So, all right, so we left off on, we're talking about the interpretations and wonderings of, looking at some of the data. Let's kind of move forward a little bit with that as far as like, implications of it, So think some of the things that we talked about. So what does that mean for our work? So what does that mean kind of for us, and what are the implications of this work for teaching and assessment, and what strategies, might, be most effective? So all that what we have was all good stuff that you all shared, so what can we do now? Or what should we do now?
I think this goes back to things like, should we vertically align our courses so that we are covering things appropriately and kind of almost like a check on each other, like accountability.
Let's break it down a little bit more. Let's say just within in this cohort here, this group, what can we do for and we're gonna talk about our vision here in a second. We're kind of thinking about what can we do to help improve some of those things.
Okay. Well, we can do a better job making sure that we're asking each other, what are we hitting these standards these months, and make ourselves accountable to each other, rather than just assuming, oh yeah, I did a lesson on this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make sure that your kids were getting these standards? No, I didn't get this. Well, here's what I did.
Okay.
Making sure that we're having those real conversations. I think some of us skirt around it, don't really have it. I know that I'm guilty of that myself, so I'll take my part in that. I think that we blame time. I think that we blame other things. So I think that having those real conversations about making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable for the standards and how we're doing it, and then comparing how we're doing it. Because some of us use just the book resources, some of us use supplementary materials, and therefore some of us are having more or less success. And I think if we did a better job of comparing those things, and we don't necessarily have to meet every time, maybe we can do that through email.
Correct. No. You all have your own folder in my email. You do, I really do. I like that, and I respect that we just kind of, owning up somebody, because that's what we ask kids to do. We talk about that academic ownership. They got to own it, which is good. One of the things, and this is real world. One of the things that helped me be a better teacher is when I had kids in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally looked myself in the mirror and said, how would I want someone to teach my kid? And I thought about it, I said, that's somebody's kid out there. And that made me really kind of take a step back and look at it and say, you know what? One size does not fit all. I have to be, I hate to use intentional again, but I almost have to, be purposeful of each kid. And you're right. Time runs out. Where we gonna find that time? And that's we all have our own lives. We all have things that we have to do. Life doesn't stop. That world keeps turning. That sun gonna rise every morning. But that helped me to really start the process for me to really focusing on, the minor details on each kid. But so that's a very, very good point. And I think what we have again in this room, I think we can kind of start that ball to rolling a little bit. Anybody else want to jump in there? And I like what you said too. You're right, and just being intentional. Big group and the goal is to kind of branch out that vertical alignment. But as she said, what are you doing in Mr. Stu's class? Say she has all 9th grade, and you have 9th and 10th. Maybe y'all conversation y'all have, and you can somehow align it with 10th grade. But you're right. We got to have that conversation, and I go there too. When I taught, I was isolated. I did my thing in my class, and I went to my department meetings, and I was friendly with everybody, but that was not a whole lot of conversation
Right.
of what you doing, what worked for you. Can you share? You know, I mean, I just didn't do that. You know, I don't know if I knew that, but I just didn't do a lot of that. You know, until later on, we got into Carpe Diem and so on, and then we start having those conversations. But I think those conversations I think they're very valuable, you know, to have with colleagues, and, you know, that's why I tell people, just because I'm an assistant principal, that I mean, I'm over anybody. We in this together. You know, I don't roll that way. We in this together. We all about kids, so that's just kind of how it is.
I want some more of the things that we talked about with the resources, with having those higher order questions, that they can actually apply it, and I can see better how they're doing with those. And using those as a teaching tool and not just as assessment, because they can't just see it one time or a couple of times a year and then us expect them to understand how to apply all those concepts.
Yeah.
Because they need to be, I mean, I like the idea of breaking these standards in and teaching, but that's not really what the reading is. The reading is understanding that given passage and how to break that one passage down. And so really, it's just, can they figure out what the author's trying to say? You know, it's all those things all at once, but they need a lot of practice with
Right,
that.
and it's funny you say that because, I mean, we take a week to 2 weeks on an article,
Right.
but then and we analyze it, we go through it
Yep.
word for word, and then they have to go back, you know, they have 90 minutes to do something they've never seen before.
Right.
But we take we take a week and a half to go over one of them.
And they don't know how that connects. How does what we're doing with this text, where we're breaking it down and analyzing it, how does that connect to some text that has nothing to do with it?
Right.
I mean, because, and I'll use the same language, but even when I say, you know, stop and jot, just like you're doing while we did the text, they don't see how what we did here applies to the text.
I think I agree with you. You're asking like what we can do. I think what we can reasonably do, and something that like it's on my summer agenda, is like going through each of these articles and like rewording the questions. The
Yeah,
questions
writing
just-
higher order questions.
Yeah, like that. And
I
that
agree
would
with
take
you.
forever,
It
but
would
that's
take
what,
I completely agree.
Even with the guided questions, we were talking about how we had to go through, and with my kids, I gave them the guided questions from the work,
Yeah,
but then I have to go through and reword them all as they're going through because they don't
yeah,
understand
talk about
them.
them.
Well,
They
and
don't
the
get
problem with the open-ended thing is, they could be thinking be close, like, because a lot of it is open-ended, like, and it's that discussion, so they could be close, and they could get some good understanding, have the greatest explanation. But if you're given a choice of 4 things that someone else has written,
Right.
they can't take what they're thinking and apply it to one of those 4 choices. So I almost feel like we need to have the open-ended question where they answer it, and then a question that goes with it with the 4 answers, and then say, how do you pair what you answered to one of those 4 choices? Because that's what they're supposed to be able to do.
Yeah, and with that too, I mean, and we talked about it before, you know, a little, you know, in social studies was, you know, just, you know, common assessments. You know, if you have the same grade level, you know, and that starts a conversation, you know, if my kids, if both our students took the same test, where her kids averaged 85, mine averaged 67, I need to have a conversation with her. Like, how did you teach this? What did you do differently that my kids didn't get? But it starts with those questioning techniques and all that, you know, and they can branch out for that. And I do agree, so I mean, it can work, but we just gotta
It's
come
gonna
up
be
with it.
time consuming, but I am completely willing to put in the time. I just, like I said, it's not something I can do by myself. I
Right.
tried to, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think that, and I tell people, and I'll tell you, you know, education is you're always on the clock. You know, it's a way of life, you know.
One of the things, I don't know if this necessarily applies, but I'm looking at the last question of this part, the strategies that might be effective. In order to prep the kids for the EOC, or the test, the Performance Matters test that we all took, I had them look at the strands that we were gonna be tested on, those 6 strands, and I had them break down the questions into everyday language. So I gave them the actual ELA standard, had them break it down into everyday language, and then I had them make their own questions from stories that we had done based on them, and then ask each other questions and then have to answer it based on that, you know, and I know that that's a very simple thing that probably everybody does.
No, but I
But
wanna
they
get
felt
to that
really
point.
comfortable, but
I
then they're
wanna
like,
get to
oh,
that
I
point.
understand what this means, this is just an ACE question where we have to answer it, cite, and explain, oh, this is just where we have to use this to answer this, well, this is just this and this, and I was like, yes, but you understand now where LA 9.12 point da-da-da-da-da means this. and they felt good about that. And we only did it for 2 days, but they took the one day to break it down and create questions, and then the next day to go around and ask each other those questions and create the answers. And at least they said, now, I don't know, because I don't give my test till tomorrow and the next day, but they said they felt really good as far as understanding what the skills were. How that's gonna translate into the Performance Matters test, I don't know. But they said that they felt good, like, yeah, we learned these skills so far this year, yeah, we feel comfortable, like, we know how to do these things.
I wanna get,
I don't know
I
if that
wanna get there by
translates, but-
actually starting, like, if we start at the beginning of the year teaching, because I can't go straight to them asking the questions, because they won't be able to even formulate a question.
Right, like I had mine actually, because they're
So
not
it
allowed
would
to have
have
phones,
to
so they
be-
actually pulled out a thesaurus and a dictionary and they actually like,
It would have to be something where they've learned from the beginning of the year, this kind of a question is this. Like modeling it first, and then maybe by the end of ninth grade, them being able to make their own questions. Because if I try to get them to just do their own questions now, I'm gonna get
right, I got you.
arbitrary things that are gonna not be those higher order things. So I don't know how do you get them?
Because they had to model it after the question, so if it said, explain why this da-da-da-da, then they had to model the question.
Was it in a multiple choice format? See,
No,
and that's where I'm having the trouble, is
Right.
going from,
so their questions aren't gonna match
right.
what was on the Performance Matters, and I know that therefore it doesn't translate.
But it's still gonna get
But
them getting some better
I
understanding.
was trying to work on their egos rather than, and again, so I don't know if that did anything,
I think
but
it
I
did.
was
I'm
trying
sure
to
it
just
did,
work on
absolutely.
their
I agree.
confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence
Yeah.
is important.
I totally
But also you put it back on them too,
Definitely.
Right,
you know, and that's one of the things we talked about was the ownership, and I mean, I like that
I
idea.
agree.
Or just breaking down questions is a good skill to have. What is this question asking? And learning that academic vocabulary, because they might read something and say, synthesize, that,
right,
what is that?
Right,
Well,
and
even
then
the
they're
word
done.
analyze.
And then they're
they
done.
don't-
Right,
Yeah.
they shut
With
down.
it, they're just done.
as soon as they
With
don't
the
know the
first-
question's
yeah,
asking,
They're just marking
yeah.
done.
Absolutely.
So teaching that vocabulary, what is evaluate, what is delineate, what is,
Exactly,
I mean, that's the
that's
same
why
here,
they had to
delineate
pull
some
out,
of the US
everyone had
text.
to have
Ooh,
dictionary,
wow.
like that.
I had to look that up,
Sure.
delineate.
That's very good. We got one, let's finish up here, reflection here before we jump into, going forward. Just, real quick, what did you learn from listening to your colleagues that was interesting or surprising? And what questions about teaching and assessment did looking at the data raise for you?
I have a good, what Bethany said earlier actually made me really stop and think. She's actually willing to take her summer and rewrite the curriculum questions. I was like, what? That's dedication. I mean, honestly.
But if we could, I mean, and this is an idea, but if we could do it by grade level and like,
Everybody
I'll
take a
take
chunk.
these 2 articles and you'll do those 2 articles.
I know, but that's,
Actually
you're a
saves your
first
time
year
in the long
teacher
term,
and you already
so-
see the need for that. Like that speaks to me and says, this is the job for you. Like, you know what I'm saying though? We need you in this job. This is what we need. We need somebody to say, this is not working for our kids. This is why. It's because the language is wrong and it's not matching what our kids can do. So, that just spoke to me, so.
Well, it's very inconsistent because you get Achieve asking them questions one way, Performance Matters
Exactly.
asking another, FSA asking another way, and then we say, well, wow, our score is the same.
And now this is how
Because
they're
they're
being
being asked
placed,
differently
this is how we're
across the
being
board.
paid. All these things are resting on these questions and these tests, and so we need to act.
And our kids with the average intellect and above are typically able to generalize. And one of the things that you have typically, and the ones that are in our lower quartile, one of the things that's typically an issue is generalizing. So unless they have that exposure to a specific style, taking that and changing it to something else is really difficult. So that's why I'm saying, like with those test questions, until they have seen it multiple times and it's intrinsic, until they get to that point, they can't take it further. Whereas someone who's in our 80% of the kids are able to do that.
Right.
Those 20% of the kids, we're not doing them the best service that we can because they're not able to do that. We're trying to get them to do something they're not able to do. They can, but we've got to do it the right way and we just don't have access to what we need.
Yeah, I completely agree. I brought this up in our PLC a little while ago. My husband's a 4th grade English teacher in Duval. And they have this curriculum coming from Duval, same thing. it's very tight, and he can't keep up. In February, the school, well, not even February, now, they call it a mid-year scrimmage. And they decide whether to stick with the curriculum or whether to bail on the curriculum and do these like FSA studying, like just like focus on it. And I asked, I was like, do we have tools like that? Do we have something where we can expose them to what the FSA is gonna be? And the answer is no, we don't have anything.
Right.
Like, we have what we have, and then the FSA is just this kind of like mystery box of.
Right, but that's what we're judging all this data on.
Right.
I
So
think
for me,
partly the FSA's fault too, though, in a way, because they don't have much available for schools to have. They have one sample test and one set of
Is
questions.
it a gotcha? Is it a, alright, we're gonna give this to you in March, oh, you didn't do so well, guess you didn't get the magical mystery
And it's-
questions.
And it's not, and that was one of the reasons of the email that came out with the scores of the BAM or whatever.
Right.
See how that was tweaked a lot,
Yeah,
different, and that's one of the reasons that conversation was that, you know, why you tying just one, you know, just something like that, so that was some of that conversation because of that, yeah. You know, which we agree, we'll write it on with you know, and it's not, it's not a gotcha, but it's easy to feel that way,
right.
you know, it really is, so, very good, very
No,
good.
I do feel like the FSA does a good job though of, I mean, like,
It's just a
even the
tool.
test they did today, even the
Yeah.
test they took today, it does do a good job of seeing if they're able to use those strategies and it does assess their higher order thinking skills. The problem is, there's a big gap between what we're doing and doing that test.
Right.
And we don't have
And
anything to fill the
Where's
gap.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
And it's just another tool to see what kids, but that's the only tool we have. Even if we have some in between with resources to give us that, I think that would help too.
It would absolutely help, because like I said, 80% of the kids can take what we're doing in class and can apply it. The reason these 20% of kids keep getting a level 1 until they do this strange not reading thing, until they use this testing strategy where they're really not comprehending, they're not going to get it unless we do something significantly different.
I agree. And that's the big picture. That's the big overall picture.
So we know what the problem is, we've identified it. Now it's just the work, following up the work going into filling that.
And that's gonna be our next step. And, you know, that's
So
gonna be
does that
our,
give us permission as a group to deviate somewhat from our curriculum guide if we see that that's something that we need to do?
I mean, that's a great, hard
Well,
question.
I
but-
actually said in
but-
the email that it's only there as a resource and you can deviate from it.
So that might be something that we think of as a group.
He
Yes.
says it's there as a guide, because we're doing it with my PLC, we're not following the text specifically, we're following the skills, like let's do this at this time, move on, because they seem like they maybe building on each other a little bit, but his email said it's just there as a reference.
One thing I've learned in being in education is there's always open for change or something different, but we gotta have a plan before. Take the plan with you when you present it, don't present something, don't have a plan. But if you have a plan of what it can look like, that's an easier way to kind of, to move forward. So what would we read on one of the things, not table it, but what did y'all call it?
Parking lot.
Parking lot, let's put that in the parking lot. I heard someone one time say, let's put a pin in it.
Yeah.
And I did this, I was like, why am I touching myself? You know, it's just, but yeah, to put a pin in the parking lot, so that's parking lot, that's really good, I learned that, that's good. All right, so let's finish up with one thing here. All right, let's create a vision statement for our team. So we got some background data. We talked about some questioning things that we had of going forward, of what it can look like and so on. You know, I'm gonna share with you, we had to, I had to create a personal vision statement. So I'm gonna share that with you here, and just kind of give you an idea. My personal vision statement was, I said, it's not only an honor, but my duty to be a lifelong advocate for all humans in the realm of education. My passion is to help everyone believe that their knowledge is the most significant gift that they can give themselves. So that was my personal vision statement. So we need to create a team vision of what we want this team to look like, and what is our reason of doing it, and causes some things we want to tackle.
Okay.
So just kind of, let's brainstorm would you mind being our writer or our note taker, or, you know, that's another thing we could do, is assign roles, but, you know, we'll get there. Just kinda, you know, what do we wanna, how do we want this to look?
Develop the tools to help our students succeed
Okay.
in measurable ways.
How that develop tools, our students can succeed in measurable ways.
You can come out of every class and say that you've succeeded in this or that, but it doesn't feel like it counts if it doesn't have.
You know, I always like all students, you know, I always like, you know, a lot of times we create our learning target plans and you say, you know, X amount of percent of kids will reach this, you know. But some of them just about all students, you know.
Do we wanna focus on our lowest quartile, or are we focusing on all of the ninth grade students? Like what, I'm just curious, what's the goal?
That's a question for
I
us, yeah.
wonder if you could make it kind of, I don't know, if you say all students make equitable learning gains, because then what your students make is good for them, they don't need to match what my kids are making.
Just making gains.
They're making gain, you know, they're making what's right for them, not fair and even, but equitable.
Like that.
So we're gonna look at all data across the board for everybody? Good.
In here, yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
yes,
what I'm
yes,
just-
yes,
that's
yes, I'm
what
sorry,
I'm
yes,
just-
in here, yes, ma'am, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I like the idea of making the tools that, making and finding tools that work.
Developing and researching,
Yeah,
developing and researching.
because I think we need to find something better. You know, we've all sat in here today and talked about the fact that we know that there's a break somewhere.
There's a gap,
There's a gap somewhere, and we all recognize that.
yeah.
And we all know that these ninth graders need something because we've got them for 4 years.
Absolutely.
And so we need to do it this year, you know? And that's kind of like the little pep talk that I gave them before I did my little activity yesterday.
Good.
So something about that, giving them the confidence that, or maybe the tools, something better than what you were talking about, something better than read the question, skim the article. That can't be
That's
what they
just-
leave Oak Leaf High School with.
I'm not okay with that either,
Mm-mm.
because what
So
can they
something
do
about
with that?
that, yeah,
I don't know,
researching
read
and
them more
finding
good with that.
No.
tools,
No.
confidence, something. Can you make magic out of that?
Mm-hmm.
You can come use the board if you want to, if you wanna come up, or you wanna just kinda,
So do we wanna define what succeed is?
yeah,
Yeah,
well, what does that
that's-
look like?
Developing and researching resources to help students.
Develop and research tools to help all students
To help all students.
succeed in making equitable gains. But what's succeed, yeah, I like that, what does that look like?
Increase the use of comprehension strategies, is that, or something,
Well,
Based on
if
what
we
they're-
increase the strategies, are they still succeeding? We need some that shows succeeding. What is succeeding look like?
I know, that's what
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's the,
Oh, yeah.
Show growth, I mean, there's data to show it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can use, succeeding by, how will we know that they succeeded?
right, how do I differentiate my students from a student that already has a 4?
Well, that's why we have those equitable gains of what, I mean, but what.
What would it be?
So equitable gains can be
Learning
based,
gains,
yeah, they can be based on,
standards-based learning gains, I don't know.
maybe based on maybe your own personal assessments.
Based on personal and what did you just, standards
Standards-based learning gains.
Okay,
and
That's the way it's done.
and standard-based learning.
so based on the assessments you give in your class and also, you know, standard-based assessments.
So our baseline, are we using the test we just gave as our baseline, is that what we?
No, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're going to, this is the goal in mind, and it can change, but the goal in mind is to use 16, 17 FSA data
Oh, okay,
as a baseline. The mid-year, as an assessment tool, so when we'll convene next time, we'll look at where's the gap now, based on last year to now, because we didn't, ELA didn't do a baseline this school year. So we do last year. Then what we have to do, we're gonna have to somehow create, maybe possibly, Rebecca and I have talked, Ms. Billy, maybe a cold assessment, you know, on those 6 standards again, you know, maybe we come up with one, a short one, quick, and then we can kind of just see growth from that.
Is there any way to turn the performance matter scores into a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Like, have an idea of how many, what percentage was a 3, what percentage was a 2, what percentage is 1, so that we can kind of
We
look
can
at
do
it
that.
more?
Yes,
I like that.
yeah, what we can do
I
is,
like that a lot.
the sheet I gave you,
I don't like them.
well, the sheet I gave you, what we'll do,
Yeah.
how many questions were on there?
19.
Okay, 19, so what we'll do,
Four standards.
I will get Ms. Billy out to ask, kind of break it down for us here, so we can use
Yeah.
the scale here, just give us a rough, scale, and we can do that. Yes, ma'am.
That would be
We can do that.
great. That's
Yes,
for
that's-
comparison data.
That's very good.
We just, if we're gonna compare,
We gotta put it in the parking lot, it's gotta be, right,
because FSA is a bunch of standards, these were like 4,
yeah, correct, yeah.
so it's, I just don't think that's.
Somebody told me about another test that was really, park test, park test, park?
PAAR.
Yes, they said that they had some, they found some online that were pretty good. If I can- So that was an idea. But that's, again, going forward. you know,
And that's
kind of-
similar too. That's
Yes.
what they do up in the northern.
Yes, so that's an idea. Going forward after, we wanna talk about after the mid-year. But yeah, so I will get with her, once we get that data, and we should get that data, I won't say next week, because usually it's the 20, by the time we scan, did y'all do paper pencil or online?
Paper pencil.
Okay, so by the time we scan it in, it usually takes 24 to 48 hours, so we should have it ready fairly quickly.
I have a couple of students that are going to finish.
Okay, which is fine, no problem, okay, all right. Thank you, Mrs. Stafford.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I'll be back in just a little while, I just have to let an electrician in.
Okay, but we're done here, so you, okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So, okay, all right, so what do we have?
Developing research tools to help all students succeed in making equitable gains based on personal and standards-based learning.
Okay, one more time, sorry.
Develop and research tools to help all students succeed in making equitable gains based on personal and standards-based learning.
What do you think?
My only qualm, and you'll find out that I'm a person that thinks, I guess, but is the personal, like, only because that seems like it's student learning, not the teacher, like, personal. So how can we,
Can I,
Do you want me to write it?
yes, if you mind, sorry, can I see it?
It's okay.
That was asking me, like, what kind of learner I am, I don't know.
No, you're fine.
I think I'm everything, visual, kinesthetic, I don't know.
Should we drop that altogether though, because like, are we gonna be able to like, this is the assessment I made and you can.
Well, the only reason
compare.
why I said personal, because I heard someone say that it's not just based on the standards.
Right.
They don't want it just the standards, they wanna know how you're learning as a whole. So I,
So,
We can throw that.
so for instance, say like in Miss Soul class, say you're, you feel like your students have made strides or gains in your class based on, you know, your instruction and your assessments, but necessarily maybe didn't do well on the mid-year. You know, so is that a win or is that a loss?
Yeah, that's what's hard to
Yes.
define. And that's why I like turning that into that one, because that way I can actually kind of compare it and
Yeah.
see. So, because I have a lot of low-level ones, so if they got a 2 on that mid-year, that would be
That's a win,
a win.
yes.
So it should be something about growth then, like growth should be in there somewhere? I just feel like if it's personal and it's
Well,
hard
that
to-
gains, equitable gains, I think that works,
Does the gains
doesn't it?
then?
I think that word maybe is good. This is what we try and get our students to understand, is that the word choice,
Oh,
this is what we
yeah.
mean by that. How we're thinking about every word that's being used.
how do you teach diction?
How do you
It's
teach
the
it?
hard part, it's the hard part of them understanding this application.
What if, this is just an idea, you said based on personal goals and standard-based learning.
Oh.
Oh, I like
I
that.
like that a lot.
That really helps.
because that goes to what
I
you're saying.
think that's great.
Hey, I wanna leave level 1 zone, perfect, great goal to have by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I wanna go to the top side of the level 1 game, you know,
I wanna
whatever.
be, I wanna be able to make annotations while I'm reading. I have
Yeah.
some that just, they don't understand how to do it. And
Right.
so if by the end of the year, even if they're not passing any of the questions,
Mhm.
but they're annotating it correctly, then that's a
They're
good
doing
first
something.
step.
I can generalize now, or a little bit.
Right.
All right, develop research tools to help all students
When they
succeed
go
in
to the
making
meeting,
equitable
when we come back
gains
from
based on
Christmas,
personal goals
what's your goal for this
and
quarter?
I
standards.
think that's something we could all do.
Yeah.
Just have a little sit down with them for a second and
Students
say,
succeed
this is where you are, what do you wanna do?
in
Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
gains based on personal goals and standard-based learning. Okay. Developing research tools to help all students succeed in making equitable gains.
Can you also cover like all my stuff on my board from now on?
Exactly.
Developing research
Be a
Please.
tools to develop-
Board writer.
Leave my passes for that.
Right.
Okay, what about having something after developing research tools? Like, so we're going to develop and research tools, what does that look like? So we, so we can have something that says develop and
Assess-
research tools.
Assessment tools.
Assessment
Or
tools,
instructional
or
tools.
instructional tools.
Okay, so develop and research tools. Well, no, I mean, I like develop and research tools, I like that, but how do?
Close the gap, do we wanna put that in there somewhere, that we're between the testing and the curriculum?
Yes, in a sense, so what is that, so develop and research tools
That bridge the gap between
that.
curriculum
Yeah, okay, yes, there you go.
and
Instruction,
assessment.
oh man, assessment, so we got curriculum. So maybe, okay,
Bridge the gap between,
develop and research tools that will,
between current curriculum
I like that.
I have to see what it looks like, what is it there?
So develop and research tools,
Current
That
curriculum
bridge-
and assessment.
bridge the gap between current curriculum and assessment that will help all students succeed in making equitable gains based on personal goals and standard-based learning. What do you think?
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but I almost feel like, and this is me being picky, if we said current curriculum and assessment in order to help all students.
In
succeed.
order.
Yeah, I think that's good.
In order to, okay.
Yeah. No, but like I said, that's what we're teaching the kids to
Right.
do. We want them to take the language and be specific with it.
And it is a lot, but what it is, I think is each area is going to hold all of us accountable
I agree.
in a sense to make sure, that student achievement will increase.
And it